you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
Let us be called. By bell and bird, by maple and larch, by the beat of our hearts, let us be called together in covenant. Let us be called to spiritual wholeness, to accountability, and to beloved community. Today, with the bells sounding from Gwangju Mountain Temple in Korea and the Carolina wren singing in many backyards, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the 8th principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
Good morning, all. Those of you who are here in our sanctuary and joining us online, thank you and welcome. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our gathering hymn. It's number 347 if you've got a hymnal, and you will see the lyrics up here on the screen.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Hi, I'm Laura Goodspeed from Religious Education Council and my daughter Una. Please join us in the chalice lighting words. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Thanks.
Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist. I'm Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister of this congregation at White Plains, New York, on land formerly of the Lenape Nation.
I'm Patricia Gettle, your worship associate this morning.
And I'm Adam King, this congregation's music director.
The mission of our congregation is to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world.
And our vision is that our congregation will be a welcoming sanctuary without walls that promotes diversity, fellowship, spiritual growth, and inspiration, while committing to people and the planet through social action and service.
We gather in the light of four truths. It's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and
You don't have to go it alone. Today is the 8th full Sunday of spring. The flower moon is waxing gibbous, and will be full tonight. There will also be a total lunar eclipse starting at about 11:30 p.m. tonight, which might be worth staying up for. The length of the day from sunrise to sunset is now greater than 14 and a half hours. The days will get almost 40 minutes longer by the solstice next month. On the Buddhist calendar in South and Southeast Asia, Tibet, and Mongolia, tomorrow is Vesak, known also as Buddha Day. The holiday commemorates Buddha's birth, Buddha's enlightenment, and Buddha's death, which, according to legend, all happened on this date.
it's been a beautiful yet rainy week. I'm looking outside at the azaleas and what I think is a white lilac. So greetings to everyone. A special welcome to our visitors. We're honored to have you with us. If you're here today and in our sanctuary, we invite you to wave a hand so that we may recognize you and welcome you. Welcome. If you're new today online, please do introduce yourself in the chat. Those online may find a link to the order of service on our website, cuucwp.org.
If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone you'd like to share, you may write it in our Joys and Sorrows book on the table to my right. And for those of you at home on Zoom, please enter it into the chat. Please make the first words be joy, sorrow, or milestone so that at the end of the prayer I'll know which chat entries are meant for me to speak. For our invocation, an excerpt from a poem titled Widening Income Inequality by Frederick Seidel. I live a life of appetite. And yes, that's right, I live a life of privilege in New York, eating buttered toast in bed on Sunday morning. I have a rule. I never give to beggars on the street who hold out their hands. The poor are poorer than they ever were. The rich are richer than the poor. Is it true about the poor? It's always possible to be amusing. I saw a rat down in the subway. So what if you saw a rat? I admire the poor profusely. I want their autograph. They make me shy. I keep my distance. I'm getting to the bottom of the island. Lower Broadway comes to a boil and City Hall is boiling. I'm half asleep, but I'm awake. At the other end of me are my feet in shoes of considerable sophistication. Walking down Broadway in the heat, I am half asleep in the heat. I am, so to speak, wearing a hat. I'm no St. Francis. I'm in one of my trances. When I look in a mirror, there's an old man in a trance. There's a Gobi Desert, and that's poetry, or rather rhetoric. You see what happens if you don't make sense? It only makes sense to not. You feel the flicker of a hummingbird. It takes a second to find. You hear a whir. It's here. It's there. It hovers, begging, hand out. Please join in singing our sung invocation, Spirit of Truth.
Spirit of truth that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth. Give us to hear the rustle of thy garment. Grant us to feel thy shadow near. So may we find the strength to stand face forward, courage to walk toward the dawning day.
Greetings. It's time for us to turn to our neighbors and say good morning, passing the peace. With peace be with you, the response, and also with you.
The membership affirmation is an occasion for all our members to renew the vows of membership. For like anything, congregational membership has meaning to the degree that we commit to it. To take a moment to say out loud that we are members, to embrace together some words that point in the direction of growing and deepening our faith is helpful and encouraging. So let us renew our membership covenant and reaffirm commitment to our principles, our mission, our aspirations. At this time for all members to reaffirm membership, we also especially recognize and welcome the new members affirming vows of membership for the first time. I will call the names of the people who have joined in the last while, going back over the last couple of years, since we last recognized new members. If I call your name, if you're here, come on up and stand with me, Joe Majak, chair of our Board of Trustees, and Alex Sedova, the membership chair, Nicola D'Alessandro, Brian D'Alessandro, Rachel Diamond, Sarah Hops, Chris Rizzo, Eileen McCall, Ellen Simon, Nina Strauss. And from Colorado, Rich Lins. Hi, Rich. He is also a new member.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Joe Majak, Chair of the Board of Trustees of our congregation. I will invite all members to participate with me in the words of membership and affirmation, those who are new and those who have been committed members for decades. To our visitors, guests, and friends with us today, we thank you for being here. We are honored to have your witnessing presence for this act of commitment and recommitment of our members. Here's the instruction part. There is a half sheet in the order of service that has the words of our membership of affirmation. Please take a second to look for it now. And I ask now, will all members now stand in body or in spirit and respond with the words indicated on that yellow insert?
Actually, it isn't yellow. My mistake. Turns out it's not yellow. My goof.
This guy's got to go. Do you enter into covenant as a Unitarian Universalist?
I enter into and aspire to live by the denominational covenant of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the covenant known as our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles.
That was beautiful. Do you enter into covenant as a member of this community Unitarian Universalist congregation at White Plains?
I commit myself in covenant with all members of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation to realize our purpose to transform ourselves and our world.
You are entrusted with the authority to decide by your votes who shall be your officers, your minister, what our budget will be, and whether to adopt congregational resolutions. With this authority comes the aspirations of membership.
I accept the authority trusted in me and will strive to give to the foundation the real presence, participation, pledge, and practice.
Thank you. Please be seated.
You may all be seated.
And for you, I have Nicola and Ryan and Rachel and Sarah and Chris.
You'll take Chris's and Eileen and Ellen and Nina. And we've got one we'll mail to you, Rich. We've given, and Alex will give each member a flower, symbolizing the blooming possibilities for your membership here. For us, the flower is a symbol of our individual beauty in the midst of a welcoming and nurturing community, also a symbol of those blooming possibilities for us, all of us, when we come together to be a faith community of memory and hope. And the document I've passed out for our new members affirms our commitment to their support, and it includes our pledge to support them.
Our newest members have joined with you today in affirming the covenants of membership. Let us honor them with the congregational pledge, the last paragraph at the bottom of the insert we were just reading from. Please say it with me. The Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains welcomes you into covenant. In gratitude, we accept the unique gifts you bring to our beloved community and your pledge of your presence, your participation, your Unitarian Universalist practice, and your support of our community. We pledge to support you and your families with friendship, goodwill, and respect. After the service, please heartily greet new members with the right hand of fellowship and welcome, and let us now make an exception to our practice of not applauding during worship and put our hands together in appreciation for our new members.
And you guys can be seated now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
In 18th century Britain, Methodism originated as a revival movement within the Church of England. Among the itinerant preachers conducting revival meetings along with John Wesley and George Whitefield was one James Relly from Pembrokeshire, Wales. Relly had decided to become a revival preacher when he was age 20 after hearing George Whitefield preach. But Relly's theology began to drift away from Wesley and Whitefield. James Relly was finding his way to universalism. He was increasingly captivated by the words of Romans 5:18. Therefore, just as one man's, Adam's, trespass led to condemnation for all, so one man's, Jesus's, act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all. If all had sinned in Adam, then all were saved in Jesus. All. That was the basic reasoning of Relly's book, Union, or A Treatise of Consanguinity and Affinity Between Christ and His Church, published 1759. The book, reissued many times, made James Relly well known in both Britain and America. A sect of Rellyites emerged. One day, a zealously anti-Rellyite young preacher named John Murray called upon a Rellyite disciple to convince her of her error. Much to Murray's confusion, the woman confounded him with her logic. He found himself forced to yield more and more ground. Her name is lost to us, but through her effect on John Murray, she is a key figure in Universalist history. John Murray and his wife went to hear James Relly preach. Murray would later write, "I was astonished to witness in so bad a man so much apparent devotion." Soon John Murray was a Rellyite and a Universalist.
We strive to accountably dismantle in ourselves and in our institutions racism and other oppressions. This is the work of building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. This is our journey towards spiritual wholeness. We cannot do this by ourselves. At the same time, no one else can do it for us. It requires individual responsibility and collective action, and it requires our individual and collective time, talent, and treasure. Let there be, then, an offering to support this work, to empower our resolve, to embody our love, to shine the beacon of justice.
What to make of Czech composer Antonín Dvořák's coming to New York City in the 1890s at the invitation of a rich socialite named Jeanette Thurber, who had founded a new school of music in New York City and wanted Dvořák to come to teach American composers how to write American music by taking advantage of Native American and African American musical idioms. So we can decide what we will about that act of appropriation, but one of his most popular little that I'm about to play for you now actually appropriates a tune by one of his pupils of African descent named Morris Arnold.
Shall we pray? Dear Spirit of life and love, we gather this day as a people of courage in need of a little more, as a people of wisdom in need of a little more, as a people of compassion in need of more. This week, the U.S. passed 1 million deaths from COVID since the pandemic began. Worldwide, the official estimate is that 6.3 million have died from COVID. The World Health Organization 10 days ago announced that it's probably more than twice that. They calculate that excess deaths because of COVID exceed 15 million. We grieve the continuing losses. The war in Ukraine continues and weighs heavily on our hearts. Our thoughts and our hearts go out to our teachers who care for their students amidst COVID, amidst school shootings, amidst war and the commercialized Teacher Appreciation Week. We are so grateful for the teachers in our lives. We hold in our hearts our children who are often in harm's way as they walk or bike or bus to school. We hold South Sudan, the poorest country in Africa with a per capita income of $303 a year. Malawi, teetering on extreme poverty, has household income of $351. Other African countries are not far ahead. Our planet, in light of the World Meteorological Organization's announcement that the globe will reach a yearly average of 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial levels of the late 1800s, at least once between now and 2026. Such climate impacts will become increasingly harmful for people and for animals, for the entire planet. And we hold in our hearts victims of gun homicide. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control reports statistics on the increase in gun homicides impacting particularly poor Black youth and men. We ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, and to heal what is broken. We observe now 60 seconds of silence. Blessed be. Amen.
You hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I have I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
Norman Fisher's Training in Compassion. Trainings number 15 through 19. Grow 5 virtues. Determination, repetition, owning your inability, reproaching your demons, aspiring to the impossible. This week, number 18, reproaching your demons. There's a popular saying, embrace your demons. Accepting the reality that they exist is necessary, and acknowledging that in some ways they may have done some positive things for you can be helpful. But if they are doing you more harm than good, then reproach them for that, knowing that underneath you have a sacred, noble human nature. You can complain to yourself when a bad habit recurs. Hey, you did it again. Cut that out. Stop it. You can do this with gentleness and a sense of humor. Your bad habit or greed or anger or selfishness or jealousy isn't your essential character. Think of it as a person in its own right, a demon who comes to visit you more often than you'd like. It's the bad habit, not you, that needs reproaching. First, try to become as familiar as you can with some of your most popular bad habits. Be curious, almost scientific about it. How does it feel inside? How does it cause you to think and want to act? Study it until you can see it as if it were an independent person rather than a part of yourself. Then you can reproach it. Here you go again, my silly old opponent. Many times you have fooled me and taken me in, but not this time. I reproach you with all my heart. I see you, but I am not taken in. For the full post on reproaching your demons, see CUCmatters.org. The link is in your e-communitarian.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit with your inner demons and join me with hymn number 148, Let Freedom Span Both East and West.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both north and north, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty, wonder everywhere, let us communion find. Compassion be the golden cord, close binding through mankind. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship, human worth, our common faith and deed. Then east and west will meet and share, and south shall build with north, one human commonwealth, good throughout the whole wide earth.
We live in a society that treats the poor and working class with contempt rather than compassion, that is eroding the support structure for the most vulnerable in a context of soaring inequality. So writes the Unitarian Universalist Association's Commission on Appraisal. The Commission on Appraisal issues a report every 4 years, and this is from their 2017 report, Class Action, the Struggle with Class in Unitarian Universalism. We live in a society that treats the poor and working class with contempt rather than compassion, that is eroding the support structure for the most vulnerable in a context of soaring inequality. We may hope for a world in which one's class is chosen, where some people choose to pursue wealth and others choose careers that aren't as remunerative but offer other rewards. More than that, we may hope for a world where everyone could grow up psychologically and spiritually healthy enough so that no one would choose to pursue wealth for its own sake, but everyone would seek only to discern how their gifts can be of service to others. In any case, in a world where one's class is up to the individual's choice, we would see a high level of both upward and downward income mobility from generation to generation. In fact, economic mobility in the U.S. has sharply declined since 1980, when Ronald Reagan was elected, which was also, not coincidentally, when income inequality began accelerating. Whether class is or could be entirely chosen or is mostly consigned, nevertheless, as the Commission says, our Unitarian Universalist theology of class seeks to establish systems, economic and societal, that enable and empower individuals to make their own choices while forming trustworthy community of equality and dignity. Justice begins at home, so let's ask how we're doing in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. How about here, in this Unitarian Universalist congregation? I want us to be a little more aware. Just be aware. Awareness leads to understanding, and understanding leads to love. Understanding is love's other name, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, and we are here to love. That's what all the members here covenanted to do just a few minutes ago. Nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. In short, to love. And that means understanding, and that means being aware. It means not blithely assuming that everyone has the same means that we do. It means being aware of the sorts of barriers that are in place for poor and working class to fully participate in our congregation. You pretty much have to have a car, you have to not work weekends, and you have to be willing to brave this neighborhood, which seems totally unscary to me, but seems a lot scarier to many others. It might surprise you to learn that not all Unitarian Universalists are always aware of the way that class differences are at work in our congregations. We tend to be minimizers when it comes to cultural differences, and let me unpack that term, minimizers. It's a term from the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity developed by Milton Bennett and Mitch Hammer. On this model, people develop through stages, like Piaget's stages of cognitive development for children, or Kohlberg's stages of moral development, or James Fowler's stages of faith development. There are 5 stages. The first is denial. There's a lack of awareness of diversity. It's not possible for adult members of minorities to be entirely unaware of diversity, but some members of the majority culture can exist within a bubble such that they rarely encounter cultural difference. The second stage is polarization. And this comes in 2 versions, and both versions involve an us versus them mindset. In the defense version of polarization, we bunker in defensively protecting us and demonizing them. In the reversal version of polarization, we romanticize and privilege a culture other than our own. This stage privileges them while demonizing us. Many folks never grow past the polarization stage. The third stage is minimization. This is kind of a return in the direction of denial, except that people at this stage do recognize cultural differences, but they downplay their importance. People at the minimization stage see cultural differences as all superficial because deep down we're all the same. Minimization overemphasizes commonality. Minimization is a necessary stage for getting beyond polarization, but there's more growing that a person can do. There's a fourth stage, acceptance. We might also call it openness and curiosity. At this stage, there's an understanding that cultural differences are real and profoundly meaningful. This much was also understood at the polarization stage, but whereas polarization involved demonizing either the other side or our own side of that difference, the acceptance stage involves curiosity and openness about differences. Difference is recognized as important, but difference is explored without judgment or evaluation. Finally, it's possible for a human to work through to the fifth stage, adaptation. This is a real willingness to adapt, to learn other cultural perspectives, and to adapt one's own behavior to fit with the other person's culture, recognizing both similarities and differences of their culture with yours. It's not assimilation. Assimilation is a permanent change from your original culture to a new culture. Intercultural competence involves the ability to make temporary shifts into a different culture in order to be more effective in a particular situation. So research finds that most Unitarian Universalists are at the minimization stage, right there in the middle, stage 3 of 5. We tend to like to say, we're all basically the same. It's a small world after all. In the area of religion, we like to dwell on similarities. Many of us are attracted to the idea that the essence of all religions is the same. The differences are inessential, we may feel. When it comes to ethics, the world's religions do substantially, though not entirely, converge, but there's more to religion than ethical precepts. And as religion professor Stephen Prothero says, the world's religions diverge sharply on doctrine, ritual, mythology, experience, and law. These differences may not matter to mystics, but they matter to ordinary religious people. Muslims do not think that the pilgrimage to Mecca that they call the Hajj is inessential. Catholics do not think that baptism is inessential. One of our common ways of minimizing difference is to point out that all religions have some version of the Golden Rule. Ironically, the Golden Rule itself is a slogan of minimization. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a minimization because, in reality, what you would have done unto you might not be what someone of a different culture would want or need. To go further than the Golden Rule, we would seek to do unto others as they would be done unto. That is sometimes called the Platinum Rule. Following the Platinum Rule requires learning about the other person's culture so you can see what will work for the other person. The impulse to say that the essence of religion is in what they share is well-intentioned. There has been such conflict and violence over religions. There's been polarization. And minimization is what's called for to get beyond polarization. The thing is, truly respecting another religion, like truly respecting another culture, requires respecting and appreciating its uniqueness, just as respecting a person entails honoring what is unique and different about that person. Papering over differences and insisting that what's more important is the sameness is a deliberate blindness to some of the things that the other person, the other culture, the other religion regards as crucially important about themselves. It's putting them in a box of our definition of sameness, instead of letting them define themselves and what's important to them. Stephen Prothero's book, God is Not One, argues that the idea of religious unity is wishful thinking and has not made the world a safer place. The minimization impulse, he notes, is dangerous, disrespectful, and untrue. Instead of seeing the world's religions as starting out from different places around the base of a mountain and all trying to make their way up to the same peak, we should see it the other way around. The world's religions begin from the same place and then had to head out in different directions. Prothero says, what the world's religions share is not so much a finish line as a starting point. They begin with this simple observation: something is wrong with the world. Something's wrong. What is it? For Christianity, what's wrong is sin. And so Christianity heads out to climb the mountain to salvation from sin. For Buddhism, what's wrong is suffering. So Buddhism heads out to climb the mountain to nirvana, extinguishment, release from the cycle of rebirth into suffering. For Islam, what's wrong is arrogance, the hubris of acting as if you can get along without God. So Islam heads out to climb the mountain to humility and obedience. For Judaism, the problem is exile, distance from God. So Judaism heads out to climb the mountain of following the law to return to God. These are not different paths up the same mountain. They are headed up different mountains. After our interlude, we will look more at this minimization stage and in that context return to look at our issues of class and classism. Adam?
Thank you, Reverend Meredith. Duke Ellington so wanted to climb the mountain of serious classical symphonic music. He longed to be accepted by the classical music establishment the way his colleague George Gershwin had been accepted as someone who had fused together classical, jazz, and blues idioms into something quintessentially American, but it was not given to a composer of African descent in the first half of the 20th century to achieve that. So perhaps to paraphrase Ellington's lyricist Irving Mills, what good is melody, what good is music if accepted by folks of all classes and races?
For people at the minimization stage, more exposure to different cultures probably won't help, because minimizers will process the information in ways that look for and find that other cultures are basically the same. Instead, the way beyond minimization, the path to stage 4, acceptance, being aware of and accepting that differences are real and profound, involves developing cultural self-awareness, recognizing how deep your own culture goes in making you who you are. And then you're positioned to understand how significant culture differences are. Most people identify themselves as a stage higher than they actually are. Most people at defense will tend to self-report at being at minimization, and people at minimization will tend to self-report as being at acceptance. We do tend to hide our own attitudes from ourselves. On the other hand, the good news would be that higher stages are attractive. In our wishful thinking, we imagine we are already at a higher stage, which reveals at least that we do want to be more interculturally sensitive. And so with that context, let's return now to the issue of class. Our minimizing habits can make us sometimes rather, well, clueless about real differences in the way this congregation may be experienced. The UUA Commission on Appraisal's research gathered stories and comments from Unitarian Universalists across the country. The report quoted this comment from one respondent: "I'm so sick of being hounded for money constantly by the wealthiest members of the congregation. If they had any idea how many of us are embarrassed to volunteer at the food pantry because we are patrons, they would. They are," expletive deleted, clueless, and it's getting really old. Reverend Erica Barron, who was for many years the minister at our congregation in Kingston, New York, about 90 miles north, and is now a congregational consultant for the New England region, did some research back in 2005. She conducted a small series of interviews of Unitarian Universalists from working class and poor backgrounds about their experience of class in Unitarian Universalist congregations. All 5 interviewees reported significant experiences of classism in their experience of Unitarian Universalism. This was troubling, but not unexpected. What stands out most in Barron's work are the conversations she had with Unitarian Universalists from middle and upper class backgrounds about the project. The most common response she received when she informed people what she was doing was fear. Interviewees expressed fear that by welcoming people from a variety of class backgrounds, Unitarian Universalism would lose something precious and essential. The thing that people were most often afraid of losing was a depth of intellectual engagement. And the second most common response was a variation of, "We don't have anything to offer them." Classism, Reverend Barron found, seemed so deeply ingrained in Unitarian Universalist culture that the job of creating a more class-inclusive culture and community seemed beyond contemplation for many. 20 years earlier, 20 years before the Commission on Appraisal's report on the struggle with class in Unitarian Universalism, in 1997, the Commission issued a report titled Interdependence, Renewing Congregational Polity. This earlier Commission on Appraisal noted that one of the deepest convictions that unites us as Unitarian Universalists is a belief in the possibility of beloved community among people, whether members of a family or the most diverse representatives of humanity. That's central to our faith, that beloved community is possible. Our central calling is to realize that possibility, to in fact build beloved community. And that means addressing everything that oppresses the human heart, everything that oppresses the human body. We must do this holistically, not one at a time. As the 2017 Commission report said, as we seek to build the beloved community, we know we cannot erase one form of oppression at a time. Coming to understand the characteristics of a particular type of oppression helps us understand how it intersects with other forms of oppression. Such understanding is necessary, and as we become more convinced of their place within our institutional structures, we become more compelled to address them and start to untie the knots of intersecting oppressions. Class cannot be understood independently from race. In this manner, dismantling oppression can and must be approached holistically. Specific forms of oppression do not exist in isolation. Our class consciousness goes way back in our history. The Unitarians and the Universalists consolidated in 1961. Before that, they were two separate denominations that each went back almost 250 years in this country. There had been some serious talk about merging as far back as the 1890s, but what kept us separated was class. It wasn't belief. Early on in Universalist history, the Universalists, who got their name from the conviction of universal salvation, had also adopted the Unitarian conviction that God was one, not three. And early in Unitarian history, most Unitarians had also adopted the Universalist conviction of universal salvation. But the Unitarians were upper crust, Boston Brahmin types. The Universalists were more blue collar. As the old joke goes, the Universalists believed that God was too good to condemn creatures of his own making to eternal damnation. But Unitarians believed they were too good to be condemned to eternal damnation. And the worship styles were different, with Unitarians oriented toward intellectually challenging sermons, and Universalists employing a more emotionally expressive worship. Before the 1961 consolidation could happen, there were several years of plebiscite after plebiscite. Members of every congregation were solicited for their views. Some of the records we have of those conversations reveal attitudes painful to encounter. One Unitarian matron appears to have said that Universalists were nothing but Baptists who could read. Ouch. On a couple of different levels. Universalists countered that Unitarians didn't feel they'd had a good sermon unless they didn't quite understand it themselves. The attitude that I'm smarter than you continues to bedevil us. We overlook the gifts that people of different class experience and different class culture bring to the table. People with fewer economic resources than the typical Unitarian have learned how to prioritize the way resources are expended. Living on the edge, the Commission noted, teaches frugality, valuing resources, and the joy that can be found in non-materialistic pursuits. Those are valuable gifts to add to any board or committee, but we won't receive those gifts if we aren't open to them, and often aren't even aware of them. Just be aware, I'm urging. Become sensitive to the reality of class differences, which means getting past the dismissive minimizing so that we find it so easy to do. Creating that awareness is more than can be done in one sermon. It's not the kind of awareness that you will have by the time this service is over, even if this one sermon happens to be one that you do entirely understand. You can read up on the issue. There's the Commission on Appraisal's report. There's a 2010 book by Mark Harris titled Elite: Uncovering Classism in Unitarian Universalist History. There are other books exploring the way class and classism are at work in broader society. You can ask for and show up for programs such as UU Class Conversations or the adult RE curriculum Class Conscious, Class and Classism in UU Life. We need to learn some stuff. And learning stuff is what we're good at. So I'm asking us to play to our strength here. Everything about consumer society tells you over and over. Every commercial, every billboard, every product display, every proffered entertainment and diversion drives home the message that you are the center of the universe, that meeting your every want is what the universe is here for and what you deserve. Congregational life offers a different message. It says, get yourself out of the center. Learn to serve. The congregation isn't here to be a cozy club. It's got a mission. Nurture each other. Foster compassion. Engage in service. In decentering yourself. In serving that mission. Life has a chance to have meaning. May it be so. Amen.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Bravo. Good job on those high notes, everybody.
Laura, are you here? It's time to extinguish.
Bless you. Everyone, I did not know I did both. Sorry, everyone. Please join me in the chalice extinguishing words. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of us. We will carry that flame with us as we leave this place and share it with those we know, with those we love, and with those we have yet to meet.
Benedictory words from Laura Lynn Bellamy. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world.
If you have found solace, go and share it with others.
If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true.
And if you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.
We'll ask you to rise for this part.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh, in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving of justice, roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.